Welcome back to Unirunner Video Drum Lessons for May 5th, 2008. My name's Darren Mathis. Glad you could tune in and download. Today I've got a few voicemail messages that I've received over the last week or two, and I'd like to play those for you, and then I'll try to respond to them. I say respond and not answer because there's going to be always a lot of different potential ways to respond to these questions, and if you have ideas of your own that you would like to chime in on, feel free to call my voicemail hotline at 1-800-827-9170, or you can go to unirunner.com and leave a comment under the listing for this podcast. So let's go ahead and get to those voicemail messages.
Hi Darren, this is Mike Melinda from Tampa, Florida. Your new kit sounds and looks great. I have two questions I'd like to ask you. One is, what is a good way to learn double bass? I've been playing drums since 1974 when I got my first kit and always played a single bass. After I moved to Tampa in '93, my kit was put in the attic and I've not played until I built a soundproof room in my garage and purchased a new kit. I've tried doing paradiddles on the bass pedals but can't seem to get that down. Any suggestions? Question number two, what do you use to tune your drums? They sound really good over the podcast, and I know you're running them through a computer software to compress the sound, but I was wondering whether you tune by ear or do you use a device like Drumdial to get that correct tension on the heads, both the batter and resonant heads. Thank you so much for your time, and keep up the awesome work. Thank you.
Hey, thanks Mike for the kind comments and the great questions. That's a good question about the Drumdial and also about bass drumming or double bass drumming. Actually, I've been kind of a skeptic about the Drumdial until recently. A couple of friends of mine used them and told me I should use them and check them out because they kind of swear by them. So I went ahead and picked one up. So I got myself one right here, and I'll go into greater detail about this and I'll show you actually on a couple of my drums. I went through my whole kit and used this thing to try and tune them all. And it did a really good job as far as getting an even tension. I'm proud to say that when I set it down on my drums, that what this allows you to do basically is try and get the drum as evenly tuned from lug to lug as possible. And so this measures the tension, or I think they call it the tympanic tension next to each head. And I'll show you in greater detail here in a little bit just how this is used and some of the details and features of it. But it did a really good job. But like I said, I was proud to say that my drums were pretty well even for the most part. So the podcast I gave on tuning is still how I have tuned my drums for many years. I'll get all the lugs, and it basically looks or focuses on getting the head an even tension. And I've always known that's the way you get the head to sing or to sound most resonant. And so my technique is based on going around the drum head, and you can look back in a podcast on drum tuning, and it's the same method I used, but this just let me have a quantifiable number for the tension, and I'll go into greater detail on that, Mike. So thanks for that question, but first let me address the one on double bass drumming and how I got into that, or how a person can get into that. I mentioned before this book Chops Busters, but I would recommend finding any kind of rudimentary or elementary snare drum exercise book that just has basic patterns, such as this, with a lot of 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and a 2 and a 3 and 4 and that kind of thing. And just in fact, in the back of that book, Chops Busters, this is by Curtis Cooper, it says to go through, once you finish the book with your hands, to go through on your feet. And even though you probably won't end up playing most of these patterns on the kick drum, in fact, what I usually play on the kick drum, I find myself playing most of the time, is just singles. You mentioned playing paradiddles. On the kick drum, it would be good to learn paradiddles because it's going to increase your dexterity or your independence, ability to play various rhythms on any limb at any given time. But if you play paradiddles and single strokes on the kick drum, you don't really hear a lot of difference unless you're accenting different notes of it, but it'd be good to learn that. But if you learn a lot of these rhythms out of a snare drum book, You might not end up using those in an actual musical setting, but will increase your ability to learn and play whatever you want to play on the bass drums at any given time. So I would recommend doing that, just finding a snare drum book. You might have one laying around, but just play some basic patterns. Or just try emulating what you've been playing on your hands with your feet. You know, what they call it, call and response, where you play 1 E-enda, 2 E-enda, and then play that on your kick drum, 1 E-enda, 2 E-enda, and that kind of thing. So let's go now to the Drumdial. And like I said, I went over the whole kit with the Drumdial, and it really evened up the tone. It was sounding pretty good before. Where I noticed it really improved was this tom over here, this lower one, which didn't sound quite as even, but after I went over it, it sounded a little bit better actually than I had it. The problem was that I found the average of the tensions of all the lugs on this one, and when I tuned it up, it got a little too high. So it's too high for me now, and the kick drum, it made it too high for me as well. So I'll go through my process. I'll try to use the Drumdial to find a desirable tension for this high tom and also the kick drum. So now I've got my high rack tom here, and like I said, it was a little too high once I evened it out. So I found when I went through, I wrote down all the settings that I ended up using for the Drumdial. So on this tom, I ended up setting all the tension at each lug at 79 on this Drumdial, and I'm not sure what the unit of measurement is supposed to be. It's not PSI or pounds per square inch or anything like that. So the Drumdial comes in this box, and in there you've also got this edge gauge, which lets you keep a consistent distance from the rim, and it just snaps on the neck of it, and then you just place it on the drum head itself. If you look closely here, see if this will go into focus. There we go. So it's almost like a ballpoint pen at the bottom. It's like a ball bearing. So some people have said that they've had problems with scratching their drum head, so you might want to be careful with that. I didn't have any problems myself. I suppose if you were really moving it around on there a lot, it might scratch it. I did notice on the bottom, or on my I did notice on the resonant head on the snare that it did kind of dent it a little bit, because that head is so thin, but nothing I was too concerned with, or worse than it was already on the bottom there from, you know, if you've ever dropped a drum key or anything else like that on the bottom of your snare head or your resonant head that's really thin, it'll tend to dent it. But I didn't have any problem with any of these other heads, because I think they're thick enough that they resisted that, and I didn't really notice any scratching either. So I tried to go around this drum and make all of these come up as 79. So I'll put it here next to this one, and lo and behold, it's at 79. Let me see if I can zoom in on that for you. So it's at 79, and I'll just go around the rest of these lugs and see what we get on the other ones. And it says to lightly touch the gauge against the rim, so that's what I've done on that. So that one's 79, or that one's a little bit closer to 80. Also, before I bought this, in addition to talking with my friends and going to Musician's Friend and reading the reviews there, I went to the Pearl Drum Forum, and I'll leave a link for that too on the, or there is a link for it on the side of unirunner.com. But the Pearl Drummer Forum, there's a lot of people that have been drumming for many decades who use these and have commented on them too. So that felt a little bit more comfortable getting it too, because I was just skeptical, because I've never used any sort of quantifiable device like this to tune. And most people say if you come within 1 or 2 units on each lug, that's probably close enough. And most people say that even if you get them all the same tension around, you might still have to tune a little bit by ear. But what I think I determined on this one, that 79 was going to be a little bit too high. So what I'll do now is I'll zoom in on the dial, and I'll show you as I adjust this lug here how the dial changes. Okay, so right now it's at just about 79, and we'll tune it down slowly. And you can see how well that works. The dial moves exactly at the same rate or pace that you're tuning the key. So I was really amazed, and I think this worked better on this newer uncoated head than a coated head on the snare. And they say, I think in the instructions, that you have better luck generally with a head that's not all dented up and scratched, at least where you put the gauge itself. But again, you can watch as I lift it off of there slowly. You can see how that measured the tension. And so since I had it at 79 and I want a little bit lower, I think I'll try going to 77, so 2 down from that. So I'm going to take it down to about 75 and slowly raise it up. Now I'll go to the next lug. This next one's at about 80, so I'm going to lower it. And see, now it's totally loose right now, but it's reading at 77, so that's kind of a problem. But what I found is, once you have to go around the drum, or at least I did several times, because once you start adjusting, if you make large adjustments to the other lugs, it's going to throw the other ones off. It's kind of like tuning a guitar that doesn't have a fixed bridge. If you tune one string, it might potentially throw the other ones off, so you have to go through it several times until you kind of they start to even each other out. And by the way, I'm in no way saying that the drum dial is an absolute necessity for tuning drums. I've tuned them just fine, and like I said, this drum dial just let me know that I was actually tuning my drums pretty well. But I can see, like some people said, just to get it in the ballpark quicker, this comes in handy. And if you're changing your heads a lot, you can do it. They sell for around $60 most places I've seen, so they're in no way a necessity, but it was kind of interesting for me. I've just had fun messing around with this after, you know, a long time of just going by feel and ear to actually be able to see a number like this, so it was kind of fun. So I'm going to drop this down and just slightly tighten it up, and so it's at about 77. Go to the next one. About 80, take it down, back up. Next one. And I'm tuning it up to 77. So I just kind of keep going around the drum until they're all about 77. And you're supposed to have the drum as flat as possible while doing this. Okay, so I've gone around the head a few times, and I can see how this can quickly get you up in the ballpark. I've kind of averaged around 77, and it varies. Like I said, once you get it one at 77, if you, and it probably works different depending on what size drum you have too. But once you get one to where you want it, and then you adjust another one, it might throw the one that you already had where you wanted it off. So I've kind of got it ballparked, and they're all within 1 or 2 increments of 77. Yeah, and it sounds nice and even. So I think that's gonna get me about where I wanted it. And so I had already tuned the bottom head to 79, so I tuned the resonant head on the bottom a little bit higher than the top. So I think that'll do it. So let's go to the kick drum. Now inside the package that the drum dial comes in, they have a chart that has kind of suggested tensions for different size drums. So you can use that, you know, if you haven't had a lot of experience tuning drums, as a kind of a base or a starting point. But like I said, once you get them to kind of an even tension, you're going to have to kind of tweak them because each drum has its own characteristics and its point that sounds the best depending on what kind of head you're using. It seems like on the forums most often, with myself included, I don't really pay that as much attention to the interval between the drums as I do getting each drum to sound its best. And when I do that, usually the interval is pretty good, you know, the sound from one drum to another. So what I'm going to do is just loosen up all these lugs. I'm going to tune it the way I normally do, and I'll go through that again here real quick. And this is the same way I tune all my drums. So we're going to go around and get all the lugs so they're loose, so they all rattle. Okay, now I'm going to go opposite ends and just get those lugs, those tension rods, so they sit on the claws and not even all the way finger tight, just so they're sitting on it. And I'll go opposite ends over here, do the same thing over here. They're just sitting on the top over here, just so they come to a stop. Over here. Now I'll go around and make sure they're all at the same point. So right now we've already achieved, for the most part I would say, what the Drumdial is trying to let you achieve once you get up in the higher tensions, and that's uniform tension from lug to lug. Okay, so now I'll start going around the drum and just turning them in very small increments. I would say, you know, a quarter turn or less for each of these. And you can go back and forth like I mentioned, but it seems like doing that tends to throw off the tension of the ones adjacent to it. So I've found that if you can certainly do that, works great, but if you go very quickly like I'm doing and just very small increments, it works fine too, is what I've found. They're starting to get almost all the way finger tight, so I can't move them. So right now they're all finger tight, so I should have a pretty good consistency and tension there. So what I'd like to do from that point is take the drum key and just start going around very small increments again. You can see I just barely turn the key there. That could be time consuming. That's where the Drumdial might come in handy. So if you do it really quick, it usually doesn't take too much time. Just very small increments. The goal being to keep the tension even. So that sounds pretty dead. Well, for one thing, this is a Power Stroke 3 head, and it's got this internal ring of mylar material that goes on the inside. It's also got this thing, this Phantom Slam, which will just kill the resonance on any head, but I'm using the plastic side of my beaters because I wanted more attack recently, and I vary my sound up every once in a while. But it's also got this internal pillow, so you're not getting much ring at all there. So this, I'm going to try and get pretty loose. So now that I've gone around and done what I believe is pretty even tuning, I'm going to check it with the Drumdial and see what it reads here. Okay, we've got 72, 73, 72, 72. I think 72 is what I'm shooting for here. What did I have it at before? 70, what was it? 75. Yeah, so okay, this is 69. Now if you lift it off the drum like I did just then and drop it down, you'll find small variances. Like it's a little bit higher, it's almost closer to 70 if I just move it a little bit. But it's not a great degree of variance. 71, 71, 69, 72, 72. I think I already did this one. Yeah, 72. So you can see my technique where I go around and just do very small increments but quickly. Gets a pretty even tension if the goal is, as most people say with the drum dial, is to get within 1 or 2 increments. So I'm pretty happy with that, and I think it's going to be what I'm looking for, because before, when I just did it with the drum dial, I tuned them all up to about 75, and the head was getting a little bit too choked at that point, a little too tight, so I brought it down a little bit, so I think I'll be happy with that. Okay, so I got the kit all set back together, and I would be happy to show you how the tom and the kick drums sound, but it's about 10 o'clock at night, so I better keep the volume low or my family might come down and beat me up. But I can tell just by tapping it, that's about where I wanted it. And if you want to hear how it sounds, you can check out the last podcast, because now I've got them about where they were before. But I just wanted to show the advantages of using that drum dial. Like a lot of people have said, it helps you get in the ballpark real quick, especially if you're changing heads a lot. But made it all this time without using it. Many people never touch the thing, but it is a useful tool, and I encourage you to check out some of those reviews too at Musician's Friend if you're thinking about getting one. Also, I posted a link at unirunner.com/store if you are interested in getting one, and go through the link for the drum dial on that page. I'll get credit for the sale, and it'll help support unirunner.com. So check that out. Like I said, I had a few more voicemails come in, but I'm not going to have time to get to them today. So I'll cover them in the next podcast. And also, if you've got a question, comment, or suggestion, you'd like to call the my toll-free hotline, it's 1-800-827-9170. And I'll leave you with a video that was sent to me by Andreas Olhebrandt from Sweden. And he's a drummer. He sent me this video he made with his camera phone. It's really low quality, but you can tell that the guy just really has a tremendous groove. I mean, I compared his drumming to kind of had a Steve Gadd kind of feel. But let's see, I'll put his MySpace link to his MySpace page too while I play the video. But he's 24 years old, works as a freelance musician in Stockholm, and he plays a lot of gospel, soul, funk, and some rock beat. Yeah, so he's a touring freelance musician. And Andreas, thanks for sending in this video of you jamming out on the kit. So enjoy. Till next time, keep practicing, and God bless.